I've just been reviewing, taking macro shots, and I've been having a bit of a play around because since I've bought this Sony mirrorless, I haven't actually got a macro lens. I've still got my old Nikon. So well, actually, they're Sigma lenses, but they've got a Nikon fitting, and I've got this sort of cheap adapter that I can plug onto my camera, but it means I have to use it in manual, and it's quite a pain because I can't really see what I'm doing. So I've been out in the garden the last few days and experimented with various bits and pieces. So this first shot is with the Nikon macro lens. It's actually a 70 to 300mm zoom, but it's got a macro facility at the 200 to 300mm end. I can't tell what aperture I'm using. Basically, it's either wide open or shut. So this is so basically I have to shoot everything on manual with this. Focus, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. Well, about the only thing I can automate is the ISO. But in trying to get the right exposure, you tend to get areas like this burning out. The rest of it looks okay, but with my camera, you get this black and white stripe pattern where it's overloading, and if you just take the aperture that the settings that you're given, very often those areas will be burnt out. So in trying to get that sorted in manual, you end up having to fiddle about with the shutter speed and the ISO. I can't do much with the aperture because that's, as I say, either wide open or shut. So this, I don't know what the aperture is on this. It must be something like f32 or something ridiculous. And I'm on ISO 500, that 400th of a second, which basically, as I've got no steady shot with the lens, the perceived wisdom is that you set your shutter speed at 1 over the focal length. So with a 300mm lens, you want it at least a 300th of a second. So these are the settings I've ended up with this macro lens. So I don't. Yeah, so the objective of the exercise is to see if I can get away without having to buy a new macro lens from my Sony. Now this is quite a cheap Sigma lens. There's no steady shot on it. I think it was about 100 quid. So it didn't break the bank to buy this. This is the first shot. So this is at 300mm with the macro setting, and the closest you can get in with this is I think 1:2 rather than a true 1:1 with a macro. And the handy thing is, I suppose, with using the very narrow aperture, is you get quite a good depth of field. And as you can see, there's a ladybird there or something that I didn't see when I took the shot. This is the next one, same thing, same lens. I'm not sure what I did with this one, to be honest, but you can see it's out of focus. The Stigma style, whatever it is out of focus. So that's a big problem with macro photography, is trying to get a shot without the shakes. what's this next one? Right, so now I'm back to my Sony with a 240mm macro lens. I've got it on f9, and I'm on aperture priority. So I've set the aperture at f9, which is more or less my standard fare. That's interesting. So yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm on auto ISO or not on this, but again, I set the exposure so that these white parts, which are very reflective, don't get overloaded. And at this f9, you can see I've got the centre of the flower pretty much sharp. You can see that, whatever that is, sort of vaguely like a ladybird, but different settings. But the B on the edge of the petal is out of focus.
Yeah.
So what I tend to do is try and get as much.
It's still a very narrow depth of field, then, isn't it?
Yeah. So what?
I mean, is there any benefit of stacking?
Yes, possibly. Yeah. What you find is you can only do it if there's absolutely no wind.
Yeah.
If you talk about outside, because if there's any movement on the flower between the exposures, it just goes to mush. I've tried it with my oldest, which had a built-in focus bracketing function. But unless you've got absolutely no wind and nothing moved, it proved very difficult to stack.
Yeah. I'm trying to find no wind in this country is a bit.
Well, yeah, I only did this about an hour ago. There's not much wind at the moment, but what I've done here is I've gone up to f22. So and you can see I've got quite most of the flower in focus, just about everything I want.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll put that on full screen.
Yeah.
Pretty much in focus.
Yeah.
Another
flower is you've got a bit of you've got the narrow depth of field because the bit in the background is a little more blurry, obviously.
Yeah. What you can do to assist with the background is when I normally do my post processing, because that's what it looked like when it came out the camera.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's me fiddling about with it, and basically I've just done a square crop and zoomed in a bit. So if you look over here, I've had to push the exposure up by about 3 stops. I've dropped the highlights right down, and normally the shadows I would have right up there. But with these flower shots, I find it's sometimes better just to, you can take the shadows right down, and it's not done it very good on this particular shot, but sometimes the background just disappears then and into darkness.
Yeah.
So I don't want too much because it's making the front. And the other thing I tend to do with my shots, move this out of the way, is I'll use a radial filter, which is there, and that just does a double whammy on the highlights and the shadows, and it bungs up the texture. So that's taking the texture right down. You can see it's gone all fuzzy. So that just sharpens the center up. And the what has it got? Oh, dehaze. Yeah, there's this function called dehaze that seems to work better than contrast. To be honest, gives it just a little bit. But I take that right up. You can see it darkens the darks and lightens the lights. And
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing what you can learn by tweaking controls, isn't it?
so basically, I mean, if you have to push the exposure right up, which I've had to do on this, then sometimes it starts to look a bit washed out. So giving it some dehaze will bring not quite the what's the word I'm looking for? Saturation back.
Yeah.
And add a bit of detail. So where's the switch now? So that's without the radial filter, and that's with it. So it just pings the centre of the flower up. Right, so I just do a full. So that's it in all its glory.
Yeah.
Right, what's the next one?
And yeah.
Oh,
Nice recovery from the original, isn't it?
This is the same shot, but using a 24mm lens.
Right.
I've now zoomed right out on the lens. So if I reset that's the original.
Yeah.
And I've zoomed in and fiddled about. So as you can see, I've got a massive depth of field with a shorter focal length, and it still looks a reasonable photo.
Absolutely.
But I've gone from 3,600 by 3,600 pixels to 12 by 1,200. So you wouldn't be able to sort of blow that up in a print too high.
No.
Oh well, yeah. This is just, you can see the problem with macro stuff. That's blurred out focus. Not sure why. I'll probably move. These are a few I took the other day.
Yep.
So being f18 and crop. So basically, the principle is use a long focal length to fill the frame as much as possible. Use the smallest aperture you can get away with, because with this lens I've got vibration reduction on the lens and the sensor, so you can go, it gives you about an extra 4, 5 or 6 stops over not having any of that stuff.
Nice.
This is again 240mm f18. I've got most of the flower in focus.
Yeah.
Backlit this one. The fact that the sunlight was just grazing the top of the flower.
Yeah.
This is one I took ages ago. This was actually on my Nikon with the Sigma zoom lens. That's f11. But you can see
I always think when I look at dragonflies like that one of them strangling the other one.
Yeah. They're not actually dragonflies. They're not dragonflies. They're
damselflies. Damselflies, aren't they?
Damselflies. That's it.
Yeah.
The difference is damselflies close their wings.
Flies are like that, and damselflies are like that.
That's it. Yeah. Right. So the other way of getting, again, this is with my my Nikon and that's a standard 24-70mm lens. Trying to take a photo of this thing. Why I'm on f3.2, I have no idea. It's one of those things you take photo and you forget to adjust things. So I think I've shown this one before. So that's a better shot using the Nikon.
Yeah.
And then the one this on the right, I use my phone, and as you can see, the depth of field's much larger. It's looking a bit over sharpened, to be honest, but
Yeah.
You know, this because when with the lens on your camera, you can't necessarily get all that close to the subject, but with your phone, you can actually, you know, you can just stick your arm out and put your phone right up close, and they will focus quite close to the subject, and you can very often fill the frame.
Yeah, I tend not to use my phone because my hands shake like a leaf, and usually I can't even press the blooming button without everything wobbling. So
I bought myself a selfie stick for my phone, and it's got a Bluetooth remote button on it.
Oh yeah.
So I can put my phone on this selfie stick, extend the stick to as close as, and then just use the Bluetooth button.
That might help me out.
So I think that was a shot with the Nikon there. You can see it is a better quality. That's a bit. I've over sharpened that a bit too much.
Tiny little flutter fly on the side, isn't it?
Yeah. Normally they fly off as soon as you point a camera at them.
Yeah. Depends what time of day it is. Probably a bit tired, you know, in the morning.
So this last few, the ones I used my phone.
Yeah.
That's slightly out of focus there, because the trouble is I can't really see when it's in focus and when it isn't. But that's not too bad. I went really too close, and that's way out of focus. I think that one, I've still got a bit too close. But you get quite a big depth of field, considering the focal length it's on f2 at 4.2 millimeters. So that's another way around to get, because you know, getting in and getting a reasonable shot of a flower. So I think if you have a look at that, where I've got used macro lens, that has got me in really much closer. But where have we gone? You know, you can still crop it.
Yeah.
You know, and you still got a 4 megabyte photo.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that's it. Sort of trying to get out of bonds, paying out 800 quid for a Sony macro lens.
Yeah.
So I think I'll stick with my standard stuff. I think if you want to get really up close and personal with these insects and that, then you might want to think again. But my main thing is just taking photos of flowers.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's about it.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much, Paul. We'll